What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have our area of interest. We have more model data to talk to you about as well. We also have our area of interest in the subtropics we're going to briefly talk about too, and we're going to be mainly mapping out the possible scenarios as to what may be happening as more of the model trends have shifted further to the west, and maybe a potential Florida impact is starting to become a little bit more plausible at this current time. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. So here's what we have from the National Hurricane Center. We have two areas of interest. We have one in the subtropics right here, and we have this one right here that we're going to be watching for the next week or two. So let's go ahead and get started with this area of interest, briefly go over that, then we'll get to the main meat of the video. Here's the 8 a.m. advisory at the time of recording this video. A non-tropical area of low pressure is located several hundred miles northeast of Bermuda. There is a slight chance that the system could develop some subtropical characteristics through tonight before it runs into cooler waters in the northeastward on Sunday. 10% in the next 48 hours and in the next 7 days. So that's what we're watching over there. That does not really have an impact potential for anyone right here, but this area of interest right here, you're going to want to pay attention to for quite some time, because as this enters the Caribbean, no matter what happens, no matter how this develops, and no matter how this strengthens, somebody is going to get impacted by this, and that's the main concern going forward. So here's the latest advisory east of the Windward Islands and the Caribbean Sea. A tropical wave located about 800 miles east of the Windward Islands continues to produce a large area of showers and thunderstorms. Gradual development of the system is possible during the next several days, while it moves generally westward at around 20 miles per hour. So this system is booking it at this current point. Regardless of development, the system is expected to bring heavy rainfall and gusty winds to the Windward Islands Sunday and Sunday night, then move across the Caribbean Sea through much of next week. 30% chance in the next 7 days. We're going to want to watch this very closely, because a lot of models want this system to really blow up in intensity. Some models have this kind of stalling out, heading towards Cuba and Jamaica. A couple have it heading towards Nicaragua. We're going to want to pay attention to the steering currents. Those are going to be the main things that drive this system, and we're going to want to watch the evolution of this, especially as it enters the eastern and central Caribbean Sea. But going to satellite imagery right here, we're going to go ahead and show you a few things that we need to take a quick gander at. Here's what we got for you right here. Definitely starting to see a little bit of an increase of rotation so far with this system. We're definitely seeing a much more robust area of rotation than what we even saw yesterday at this current point. You can definitely see the outline of it a lot better. And you're also noticing this convection is continuing to become more and more consistent. So the system is starting to kind of slowly organize a bit more. It's not going to develop until it gets into the Caribbean Sea. I do want to make that clear. However, given the convection that we have right here, and given kind of how this is organizing and how much of a start it's off to right now, this system is going to bring some pretty significant impacts to the Windward Islands. Regardless of development, you're going to potentially see a pretty big flash flooding threat with this. And then as this enters the eastern Caribbean Sea, it's going to be in a whole new environment, and it's going to be in a much better area to develop. The shear is going to drop. You're going to have more moisture. It's going to be one hell of a day once it does that. So that's what we're looking at this current point in time. You do have this convection kind of to the west of it right here. I would not be too worried about this kind of disrupting this. In fact, I would be more concerned that this is actually going to be producing a more moist environment moving forward, similar to what we've seen in other systems that have moved through the Windward Islands. Not saying that that's going to happen, but you're definitely seeing more moisture and less dry air with this convection kind of starting to blow up a bit more, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. And going right here, this is our water vapor imagery. You can kind of tell more and more moisture is getting pumped out by this convection right here, moving into the Caribbean Sea. There is some dry air over there right now in this portion of it. But as this convection continues to move further to the west, that's going to become less and less of an issue. You're just going to see this move through these regions in the next day or so at this current point. And from then on, we're going to have a much more moist environment, probably than what I think some of the models are anticipating at this current point, given how persistent, given how much this convection is blown up, especially over the last couple of hours. Right now, so you're going to want to keep an eye on that, and that might be one of the things that that helps the system develop more so in the long run. Because before, the thinking was it's not going to develop until it gets at least to the Central Caribbean, because the dry air and some wind shear. Well, that dry air problem is becoming less and less of an issue as the hours continue to tick by. So that is definitely something that you're going to pay attention to. As for this area of interest right here, that's kind of allowing for this to rotate, it's going to move through that moisture as time continues to go on, as it crosses the Windward Islands, as it moves into the Caribbean. And then once it starts, the shear starts to drop a bit more, it's going to give it some more time to organize. I do want you guys to keep in mind that this is a pretty robust wave at this current point. It is a pretty large wave, for that matter, as it is right now. But as it gets towards the Central Caribbean, it's going to consolidate more, and it's going to want to intensify as such. And you might see a low pressure when this first gets designated as an invest or a tropical depression. Understand the reason for that is mainly because this is a pretty large system. So that large systems with lower pressures but weaker wind speeds are not out of the ordinary. I know Hurricane Wilma in 2005, before it exploded in intensity, I think it started off below 1,000 millibars, if I remember correctly, before it started becoming a tropical storm. That's kind of because it emerged from a monsoon trough, and then it just started rapidly organizing from there. Am I saying this is going to be Wilma? Absolutely not. That was a storm in a century over there. In that part of the Caribbean, and I pray that that does not happen ever again in my lifetime. But am I saying that this system has a very high ceiling given the conditions ahead of it? Absolutely. And as I go ahead and start showing you in model runs in just a second, you'll understand why. So starting off with this right here, here is your European model. We're going to go ahead and zoom in to the Western Atlantic because I want to give a bigger analysis on this. Similar to what I did yesterday, just to kind of show you the latest model runs. The European has been a bit more interesting. It has shifted this system further to the west towards Central America. So I do want to preface by saying that. So I'll go ahead and show you this. You have the system moving through the Windward Islands, starting to kind of move through the Central Caribbean Sea, not really showing that much for the next 5 days. But then as the system starts to consolidate, you're getting to 135 hours out. This will be by October 23rd in the morning. And then you have the system starting to kind of at least try to get its act together, but the European wants this to head towards potentially Central America, Nicaragua, and Honduras, and remain relatively disorganized for quite a while throughout this entire model run, which is a bit different compared to what we saw at the 12Z, which let's go ahead and pull this up very quickly right here. 12Z system crosses through the Windward Islands tomorrow, and then you have this getting into the Central Caribbean Sea by the time we get to the 21st of October, and then you had the system starting to organize pretty much in the southwestern Caribbean Sea around October 22nd, having the system kind of start to stall out a bit as it starts to slowly consolidate and get its act together. And part of the reason for this is because the steering currents that are in the Midwest right here, those high pressure systems that are starting to dive deeper, closer and closer to the south and deeper away from Canada, are going to start to kind of collapse and allow for the system to stall out and start to organize and develop. Getting up to tropical storm strength, a consolidated tropical storm is plausible by the time we get to October 28th, and then the system really starts to ramp up in intensity. The European, curiously, does have the system moving much back to the east and then towards Haiti and Jamaica right here, which I do think is kind of interesting. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out, but that was the 12Z from yesterday. 0Z had this further to the west towards Central America, so we're going to want to watch that. We're mainly going to want to watch these steering currents up here in the Midwest and in the south of eastern United States, because if those steering currents are stronger than anticipated, this system's going to crash into parts of the Central America right there. Greg, I saw your comment. I know you said I should use a different a word for that. I'm gonna be do a little bit better than I'm gonna do a little bit better this video, but ultimately that's what your situation is right here. So we have still a lot of unknowns. The main thing that's going to be driving this is the steering currents, and when those collapse will be a very big determinant on who gets impacted and who doesn't. So that's what you have with the European. Let's go ahead and show you the AI model. Here's the Zero-Z AI model. Zero-Z AI is still wanting the system to get its act together, although it's still kind of getting further to the east, and then as it moves towards the north right here, by the time we get to about October 30th, as right now, the system starts to slowly organize and develop in this part of the Caribbean. So the AI run is kind of lagging behind the main operational runs, and then as we show you the GFS, 12Z is starting to come in, but we won't have enough time to get through that by the time this video ends. I'm recording this a little bit earlier in the morning, but the GFS, for some bizarre reason, has a system developing from whatever vorticity off the coast of Nicaragua, and then you have the main system starting to kind of develop and really blow up in intensity before making landfall in Haiti. Over here, is this a plausible scenario? First of all, this isn't right here, and I want to check where this vorticity is coming from. First of all, yeah, it's coming from South America. Yeah, that doesn't happen. So you can already cross off this whole situation right here. Now, as for the vorticity of what we're dealing with from this area of interest, yeah, that vorticity remains relatively unchanged and remains pretty stays kind of by itself for a while, and it kind of meanders and stalls out in pretty warm and pretty good conditions. 939 millibar system as it heads towards Haiti right here is not something to scoff at right here. And then as the system moves out to sea, starts to reorganize and strengthen once again. We're going to want to pay attention to this, but I will say do not trust the Zero-Z GFS. Mainly because of that area, that new system that kind of pops off from vorticity in South America. That doesn't happen. That's not how tropical meteorology works. As for the vorticity over there, I think it kind of that faux vorticity kind of impacts that area right there, but we'll have to pay attention to it. GFS still quite unreliable at this current point. Then we go to the Canadian run right here. Canadian is pretty interesting. Before it had it crashing into Central America, but then as you had the system starting to organize and develop, then you have it kind of stalling right off the coast of Nicaragua, then moving through Central America, and then emerging out through Honduras right here. So that's going to be pretty interesting compared to the previous run that we saw, which had it moving through Central America and dissipating, I believe. Yes, it did, moving through Central America and emerging off the Eastern Pacific. So that's a considerable shift to the east from the Canadian run we've seen previously. And then we have our Icon model. Icon is not particularly the best model to use, but the 12Z is actually out. So we can go ahead and show you that. Here is the Zero-Z first for reference. Zero-Z has the system moving and starting to get its act together in the Central Caribbean Sea, and then it starts to become a tropical storm strength around October 23rd, and then as the system starts to slowly get its intensity and get its act together, 994 millibar, that's a strong tropical storm, 2-week hurricane by October 25th. And where it goes depends on what the steering current does over here, this high pressure system over the Appalachians does over the next 48 hours, whether it determines whether it heads towards Central America or north towards Cuba and Jamaica. So that's your Icon 18Z. Here is your 12Z run right here. Similar situation, actually, developing this in the Central Caribbean Sea, and then starts to slowly get its act together right here, and then 1,000 millibars, and then 1,001. So it's definitely a bit of an eastward shift compared to what we've seen previously. And another thing to note is the steering currents are kind of a lot more unknown in this run than what we've seen previously. There's no high pressure system over parts of the Appalachians right here, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow for this system to kind of get curved up and get pulled to the north, especially with that low pressure system starting to develop over here in parts of the Mid-South and Midwest region. over here. It's going to get pulled up potentially towards Jamaica, Cuba, and the Bahamas. That is a scenario that we're still paying attention to, and we'll continue to watch here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But ultimately, still a lot of uncertainty in regards to the track, but the ceiling is absolutely there. If this system kind of capitalizes and takes full advantage of the conditions it's going to be given at this current point. So what we need to look at now is what conditions are we working with? What conditions and what scenarios are we dealing with right now, and how can we kind of prepare for the most probable scenario? Well, let's go ahead and look at some conditions that we have for you guys, and we'll go ahead and start with our water temperatures. Starting off, here is your global sea surface temperatures right here. Pretty much from where it's at right now, it's going to be over very warm water through most, if not all of its life cycle. You're looking at 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit water temperatures through much of the Caribbean Sea still. These waters are very untapped still, even after even after this whole season, they're still very untapped. And 30 degrees Celsius waters, that is going to drive and power any system, regardless of its speed, regardless of its intensity. That's going to power any system, and that's really going to turn up the intensity probabilities right there. As long as the wind shear weakens down, and as long as there's moist air, this system will have no problem intensifying, not just because of the warm waters, but even when it stalls out. Looking at the ocean heat content, my goodness, take a quick gander at this. 175 plus OHC. So if it starts to develop in the Central Caribbean, like the Icon and the CMC are forecasting, look at this. 150 to 175 OHC. There is 175 OHC in multiple spots over there that this system can tap into. Oh, and allow for quick organization and quick intensification. That is a very big concern for me, and that is a huge problem for a lot of people. We're going to need to pay attention to this going forward. And then if this moves further to the west, look at this. OHC galore over here off the coast of Jamaica, off the coast of Cuba. Even in the Bahamas, you still have a lot of OHC over there. So that's why I've said this has a very high ceiling. Right now. In terms of how strong is it going to get, we don't know yet. We need to wait and see once it gets through the Windward Islands to get a general idea as to what's going on. But regardless of that, you have plenty of warm water. You have insane amounts of ocean heat content that you're going to want to pay attention to. And then you have to take a look at and factor in the wind shear and the moisture. Wind shear is going to be something to pay attention to. The dry air, I would not be as concerned about now, but we will still take a quick gander at that because that is an important factor. But here's your wind shear. Across the Caribbean, there is no shear right now. If this were to remain as is, which it won't, this system would emerge through the Caribbean and have probably one of the best environments to work with in terms of shear that I have seen all season. That's obviously not going to happen. You still have some shear building up as it moves through right here, and you're going to want to wait and see how this pans out. But as time continues to go on, and as the system starts to slowly get its act together right here, you're definitely going to start noticing that kind of the stream, not the jet stream, yes, but also the wind shear weakens where the system is expected to develop, and it also emerges at an angle where that could really enhance the outflow and really enhance the consolidation of this right here and really cause the system to really blow up in intensity at a very fast rate. So that is something that we're going to want to watch, especially down the line as we get to October 23rd, October 24th, and so on and so forth. That's your wind shear. What's your moisture looking like? Well, there is a little bit of dry air right now in the Caribbean, but you see this moisture surge. That's the first round of convection that's moving through. That's going to help this area of interest start to move through parts of the Caribbean and remain relatively protected. And as we get to October 21st, it's going to have a lot more moisture to work with than what we've seen previously. A lot of that dry air gets canceled out and gets moved out, and from then on out, it has a huge chance to go gangbusters. And we're going to want to pay attention to this because regardless of where this goes, somebody's going to get impacted, and we'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But as always, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.